Alright, today we're going to do writing percents, fractions, and decimals. And we will start with a percent. So let's say we have 40%. So percent is always out of 100. And because there are two zeros on 100, I have to move my decimal twice. So if I'm converting to a decimal, I'm going to move it left. So if I move my decimal left twice, 40% would equal 4/10. I can drop the zero in the end because it has no value. And then to make that a fraction, I just write it like I said it, 4/10. So that would equal 4/10. Now you have it a fraction, you need to reduce that, so we're going to divide both of those by 2 to give us 2/5. So 40% would be 4/10, which equals 2/5. So let's do one more example of that. So let's say we had 65%. So again, make it a decimal, move it twice. We get 65 hundredths. Again, just write it like you say it, 65 hundredths. So both of those, you can divide them by 5. 5 goes into 100 20 times. 5 goes into 65, well 5 goes into 6 once, 1 left over, and 5 goes into 15 3 times. So 65% would be 65 hundredths, which equals 13/20. Alright, so now we're going to compare in order percents, decimals, and fractions. So when you're doing this, you need to know which way you're going. So on this, I'm going to go least to greatest. Sometimes you'll be asked to go the other way. So I look at my numbers there. I have 1%, 1 fraction, and 2 decimals. So knowing that, it's going to be easiest to convert everything to a decimal because 2 of them are already taken care of. So I'm just going to convert that 18% and the 1/5 to decimals. So 18%, to convert it to a decimal, move that decimal twice, I get 18 hundredths. And then 1/5, I need to convert that to a decimal. So if you don't know what it already is, that is one of the benchmark fractions, but if you don't already know your benchmark fraction, that's okay. You can just simply divide. 1 divided by 5. So 5 can't go into 1, so I add a decimal and a 0. Bring that decimal up. 5 goes into 10 twice. So that would be 2/10. Alright, so now I can compare. I want the least. So I want to look at that first place value. All of them have a 0. So go to the second place value, which is the tenths. And I have a 1, a 2, a 0, and a 1. So 0 is going to be my lowest there. So the 900 hundredths is my lowest. Next I look. I have 2 numbers with 1, so I got to look at the next digit. So I have a 6 and I have an 8. 6 is less than 8, so 16 hundredths comes next. And then the 18 hundredths. But when you write this, you want to write it how it was originally written. So that would be the 18%. And then the greatest one there would be the 1/5. Alright, so let's do one more example. So I got my 4 numbers there. And now this time I want to go greatest to least. So I'm looking for the biggest number first. So looking at these numbers, I got 2 fractions. So on the front end, it looks like it'd be easiest to go with all fractions to compare these. Problem with that is, if you're comparing fractions, then you have to either have common denominators or very good sense of fractions. So that's not always going to be the quickest way to solve it. You can do it, but it's just sometimes not going to be the quickest. Because I can look at my fractions there, and 1/3 is a benchmark fraction. If you don't know it, you could just do 1 divided by 3, add a 0, and a decimal. Bring that decimal up. 3 goes into 10 3 times, which is 9. And you notice I got the same thing, so when I add a 0, this is just going to start repeating. So that's 3/10 repeating. 35% as a decimal, just move it over twice, that'd be 35 hundredths. And then if you look at the 8/16, that can be reduced. So that's why I said sometimes when you look at it, fractions may look like the best option, but when you can reduce your fraction to something simpler, it's going to make your life a little bit easier. So I'm going to divide both of those by 8. So 8 goes into 8 once, 8 goes into 16 twice. So 1/2. Again, 1/2 is a benchmark fraction of 5/10. So now I can compare these. I need the greatest. So if I'm looking at my decimals there, I'll start with a 0 for the ones place. So I look at the tens place. I have a 3, a 3, a 3, and a 5. So 5 is my greatest. So my greatest number there is the 8/16. So next I got to look at the next digit. Well, that first number doesn't have a second digit, so I have to assume that it is 0. And then I have a 3 and a 5, so the greatest there is the 5. So next would be 35%. Next, I look at the same place value. So I have a number with a 3 and a number with a 0. 3 is greater, so my next one would be 1/3. And then the last one would be that 3/10. So that's ordered from greatest to least.